Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. Today we are going to be going over 5 tips that will hopefully help you escape those low ranks and get yourself up there, maybe even in a gold, plat, diamond and above. And these tips also are tips that you're going to use later on down the road, and they're all kind of around this theme of playing smarter and just being more efficient with how you play the game. So if you guys enjoy these videos, remember, leave a like as always, and of course subscribe. Does mean a lot to me if you guys like these guys, you keep coming back and watching them. Remember, I do stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and we do VOD reviews to start each stream over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dragonmar. But with that being said, let's begin. All right, guys, tip number 1. So this is something that is super important to understand, and this is something I use a ton, and that is to play for information. So playing for information also can be thought of as baiting out the enemy utility, but regardless of how you want to describe it, the actions are still the same. Your job here is to try to get as much information as you possibly can while remaining as safe as you possibly can. Remember, if you die in this situation, when you're just trying to get info to start out a round, you have failed already. So getting information can be difficult because you have to figure out, okay, how can I balance some aggression while also playing safe? Because you want to know, okay, who is playing where and on what site. It's so important to understand which agents you're running into so you know what to expect when you take those sites. At the same time, though, you also want to try to get as much utility out of them as they can. For example, get the sage walls, get the brim smokes, get the mollies out of the way, whatever you can get, whether it's flashes or whatever. That is gonna help you because that means they won't have it later on in the round. Now, maybe you don't even go to that site. Maybe you turn back and go to the other bomb site. Well, guess what? Now, if you do take the other site, those enemies are gonna have to rotate over, and they have no utility now to retake the site. That is why playing for information is so important, because it allows you to take this time, figure, okay, who has what and where are they? What weapons? Who's there and what abilities do they have? And then how can we play around that? Generally, for example, on attack, I've talked about this before in a video, you do this by setting up a default. And a default is where, you have one person in each lane roughly on the map. You're just playing, sitting there, watching for pushes and gathering info. And then after that, that's when you plan your attack. But regardless, playing for information is so important. If you guys find yourself just blindly walking into sites, try defaulting more and try to play a more passive game to start these rounds. Now, tip number 2 is about executing sites with a split push. So if you guys don't know how to split a site, essentially what that means is instead of sending every person down into the same path, so think of on bind, for example, on the A bomb site. If you were to send every single person down short A, so down that little corridor by the teleporter, you're gonna have a relatively smaller or lesser chance of success rather than if you had sent someone or 2 people over to shower, so you're converging on the site. That's a split. Generally, I recommend a 3-2 split where you would send 3 players down one point, 2 players down the other. 4-1 can work as well. But 4-1 really is for example, if you send 4 down short, 1 shower, and that shower person gets killed, there's no trade there. That's the problem with a 4-1 split. 3-2 has the opportunity for trades, and it also means that if one of your pushers gets shut down, you hopefully with your other players have already taken the rest of the site. So even if your 3 players get shut down, there's a good chance your 2 players showers have already made it on the site, hopefully. But regardless, I do recommend 3-2. Now, it's important to remember that to execute a split properly, you have to push at the same time. So this means sometimes you actually have to hold off on getting aggressive until your teammates are in the right spot. Remember, just because you're ready to push into a bomb site does not mean your teammates are. Make sure you guys are checking the map and make sure you're communicating. A good example of this would be on split on the, I believe it's the A bomb site on split. So if you're attacking and you're running in from short over on sidewalk there, you clear to your left and you're looking at hell and rafters and all that, but you actually should be waiting for your teammates to be running up ramp and getting into heaven. That way they're clearing heaven as you're clearing site, and hopefully they'll be able to provide some cover to you, as well as make sure that no one is going to peek you from heaven itself. This is especially important if you don't play with a lot of smoke characters. because when you're splitting on these sites, you want to split the enemy attention, right? It's not just about splitting attack, it's also about taking the attention off of one spot. So they have to figure out how to use their resources, where to aim, where to put their opper, where to use their smokes, their mollies, their slows, and all that kind of stuff. Super, super important. And I hope this is something you guys have been using or you do use, because this is absolutely necessary to understand and to execute this properly once you get in the higher ranks. Now we're on to tip number 3. And tip number 3 is a big one. And this is something that a lot of people fall pretty short on, and that's how to stop rushes. And there's a 3-step process that I sort of have for stopping a rush, or at least the steps I think that make a lot of sense in about, let's say 80% of rushes. So this is something I highly recommend. So the reason I'm talking about rushes in particular is because at lower ranks, this is like the one strat that people know. You know, the rush B meme from Counter-Strike. Well, you see that in Valorant as well, which is kind of funny. And the reason is it's so simple. Just everyone run at the site, and you know, it's kind of like throwing, you know, paint at a wall and just hoping something sticks. Oh, that's art, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that, but it's like a strategy. Regardless though, you have to know how to defend these properly. So I sort of have about 3 steps, I would say, that you can take to stop rushes, but also most importantly is to stay alive. So step number 1 in these situations is to always use your utility as quickly as you can. So for me, you guys know I play Omen and Brim. I'm using my smokes like as soon as I can. Even if that smoke isn't going to help me, it might help my teammate, so I'm going to use it as quickly as I can. Mollies and slows also here are a big priority. If you have those, try to use those as well. It may not initially help you, but like I said, you can help your teammate as well. Step number 2 now. You've already used your utility. Now what I like to do, and this took some time for me to understand, is I actually start holding passive angles. If you do not have a flash, I highly recommend holding a passive angle. You can be in an aggressive spot if you want, but hold that angle passively. Let them come at you and then fire. The important part here is you need to be able to escape. You're looking for 1 kill. You do not need to mow down the whole team. You don't have to re-peek after you get your kill. You're just looking to hold that passive angle and take your fight. So step 3, well, you've taken your shots. Now it's time to reposition. Step 3 is all about getting to safety, getting to cover, and falling back and letting your team rotate onto site to help you. You need to live here. Your goal is in this order. It's to delay the rush, to live, and then to defend. Remember, letting the enemy plant the bomb is not the end of the world. You can retake a site, and if you're alive, you're only going to help them. You also can stay on site or in some tough spots, especially like on U-Haul and Bind. You can sit in there as they plant and deny that area from the attackers. You don't have to push out until your team is there to support you. Now you have them, now you've given them less map control. That's a big thing as well, map control. I haven't really done a video on that, maybe in the future. But denying them that area is so important. So remember, your goals here are to delay the rush, to live, and then to defend. Okay, you do not have to single-handedly stop a rush. Okay, moving into tip number 4. This is about team compositions. This is something that everyone should understand regardless of rank. Now, I know some of you guys are going to say, well, this doesn't work in iron or bronze and people don't play. Fine. But this is still a skill you need to understand, because maybe you want to queue up with your buddies. Well, guess what? You can use a good team comp to just wipe the floor with lesser players sometimes. So this still has value. And then once you get to the higher ranks, of course, like I've been saying, incredibly important to understand why certain people want you to play certain agents and why they work. So first of all, I always like to make this disclaimer: play what you're comfortable on. I've seen a lot of times where a teammate is forced onto Sage. They are not a good Sage player. They don't understand how to use her, and they just end up being very, very bad. And they have a horrible game. They don't have fun. We end up losing. And that's why I always say, play what you're comfortable on. If you are not a Sage, do not feel forced to play Sage, because your walls are going to suck, your slows are going to suck, and you're never going to res. Now, let's get on to how to build a successful team comp. So there's a few ingredients you need here. And the rules, thankfully, are pretty well outlined here in Valorant for us. But nonetheless, first of all, you're going to want an agent who can entry frag. So if you don't know what an entry fragger is, it's essentially your first person in. Now, obviously, you guys probably already in your head light bulb went off. You're like, okay, they probably should have a flash, right? A flash, a blind, whatever you want to call it. You've pretty much got a few options here. Phoenix, Reyna, and Raze. and Jet. And the reason I say Raze and Jet is because they have movement abilities as well. If they don't have a flash, you're probably going to want your entry fragger to have movement. So Raze, Blast Pack, Jet has her dash, and then Phoenix and Reyna have some great flashes. So now you have your entry fragger, and it's okay to have 1 or 2 of these. You probably don't want 3. I think that's definitely pushing it. So second, you're going to want an agent that can provide support to these players. Now you guys know this is where I come in. This is where I hop on my Brim or I hop on my Omen. I'm a support player just sort of by nature. I like going second into sites if possible, and I like using my smokes to help my team. So you need a support. You can also pick up something like a Sova or a Breach to fit in here as well. You essentially want someone who can go in with these players, but also is going to use their abilities to help you sort of deny, map control and execute sites and things like that. So smokes are good for that, because that way they can smoke ahead of time, then your teammates flash in, then you follow them and, you trade kills, things of that nature. Then third, you're going to need agents that have smokes if you haven't already selected one. So for example, like I just talked about Brim and Omen in that sort of support role, if you guys haven't chosen a smoke agent, I definitely would here. So just a quick little caveat there. And then finally, you're going to want to round off your team with probably 1 to 2 Sentinels. So this can include Sage if you want it to, but I'm thinking more like a Cypher or a Killjoy in this situation. And that's just because you need those players to anchor sites. And when I say anchor site, essentially what you want is they either can use their physical body to sit on a site, or their abilities to provide knowledge of when enemies enter sites. Killjoy has her turret, an alarm bat, and Cypher has, his trips and his camera. It's really important to have someone who can always anchor a site. But remember, if you put too much emphasis on your Sentinels, you will fail on attack. And this is something that we see sometimes with teams that have both Killjoy and Cypher, is that their attack is horrible, but their defense is great. So you have to figure out a way to balance that. But definitely one thing I want to recommend to you guys is you always want flashes and smokes on your team. It's so important, and they're so universally used. That's why I love Omen personally. However, you can get away with, even if you have an Omen, I still would recommend like a Phoenix or a Reyna on top of that. Then you can round out these teams really well sometimes by throwing in a Sova to the mix. I've found the more I play, the more I realize his support role is actually crucial with the information he can provide from his arrows. But that is my general recommendation for how to build a team comp. You have to remember that this stuff can vary from map to map and team to team, and that the most important part of this is the type of agent and the type of role they're trying to fill, rather than the specific agent themselves. You can play a lot of these roles with a lot of different agents. You just need to make sure you have entry fraggers and support players, at the very least. Now, the 5th and final tip is something you hear me preach about all the time on stream and in my Discord, and that is to trade kills. Now, trading kills is actually a skill. I feel like it is something that a lot of people at lower ranks just don't seem to understand the importance of. On top of that, trading kills is often incorrectly used. People will say they made a trade when really there is no trade at all. You might have traded them out like on the scoreboard, but you're not actually trading kills a lot of the times in these fights. You have to remember something when it comes to trades. You are essentially guaranteeing that the enemy is going to die regardless of if your teammate lives. If your teammate dies before you start firing at the enemy, you give them time to reset and prepare to fight you. You have to remember that that is not what a trade is about. A trade is about taking that fight with your teammate just a little bit after in most situations. That is entirely different than what happens a lot of the times, where you will swing in, you will fight a guy, do some damage, but die. Then your teammate will swing in after that, after they've already had time to maybe even reposition, let alone let their recoil reset. Then they'll fight them and kill them. They're like, oh, I traded. Well, not really. When you want to go for a trade, you're essentially trying to avoid that 1v1 at all costs. You want to go for either a 2v1 or what I like to call a 1v0. And where the 0 in this situation is the enemy, because they just don't have an opportunity to actually kill you. They're aiming at your teammate. Their spray is not going to transfer over to you in like 99% of these, these opportunities for them. It's so hard to spray transfer, especially to the lower ranks. You're essentially going for what is a free kill if your teammate doesn't kill them. That is a trade, and that is incredibly important to understand. Now, what's great about trading is that anyone can do this. You don't have to be the entry fragger. Remember, the entry fragger is actually the one who ends up getting traded in like 95% of situations. So if you are playing a support role or a sentinel or whatever, this is something you need to specifically be looking at. And developing this skill is a lot about working on your game sense, because so much of trading is about your positioning and where you're physically located to assist your teammate. It's incredibly important that you understand that like 50% of trading a kill is actually being in the right spot at the right time, and that's entirely on your game sense. Now, finally, I just want to note that communication is also huge if you're going for trades. Letting your team know, for example, if you are the entry fragger, that you're gonna swing a corner, you're gonna take a fight, just letting them know is a big part of sort of having a successful trade, where if you die, they know you are going in, so they're going to swing with you and they're going to help you. And that is incredibly important. And trading kills is by far one of the easiest ways, I would say, to just, first of all, start climbing up those leaderboards, but also climbing up the rank ladder. And guys, I think that's actually where we're going to end this video. These 5 tips were really, really important, I think, for people to understand. And I really hope you guys learned something from this video. These are things that I use all the time. And this is advice that I give to people, like kind of spread out, like for different types of questions. So I figured that I would just put all 5 of these into one video and just kind of slam it in there and let you guys be like, hey, this is really important to understand. And these 5 things are actually going to help you rank up. Like no joke. So if you guys did enjoy this, if you did learn something new, you just appreciate the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and of course leave a like for that YouTube algorithm. Really does help me out, and I do appreciate it so much. With that being said though, guys, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you want to see next, but I'll see you next time. Take it easy and peace.